It's time for the Twice Removed podcast with Linda and Gina, where we talk about all things genealogy, including making connections with long-lost relatives while snooping in on our ancestors. Hey, it's good to know where you come from. Welcome back to Twice Removed with Gina and Linda, where we talk about family connections from the past, present through genealogy research. Now, today's topic is obviously probably the most important one we could ever get to, and it is names. So yeah. Linda, that's your name.
Yeah, Gina, that's you.
Yeah, hey. So tell us about the names. Start us off.
Something that I was born with is my last name. And if you have any Scandinavian ancestry, or if you're Scandinavian, you probably know a little bit about this already. But for people who don't, the name Anderson, in my case, it's spelled S-S-O-N. Back in the day, before 1900, the Scandinavians, mostly the Norwegians and Swedish, are who I've been researching. The Danish too, but what they do is...
Are they the Vikings?
Yes.
Calling all Vikings.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But so it's a patronymic last name. So Anders' son would be the son of Anders.
Oh, okay. So that's the double S then.
Yeah, in the Swedish part, okay? And in the Norwegians, they do Andersen with an E-N. And so it's the son of Ander also. So it's like that. And with daughters, it's the same thing. It's like if my father's name would have been Ander and we would have been in 1870, I would have been Anders' daughter.
Oh, so your name would have been Linda Anders' daughter.
Yeah. Weird, right?
Well, yeah.
Well, and you know what? It makes it so difficult because it's like you really can't trace families back very easily unless you already know everybody.
So is that like Anders' mule and Anders' dog? And
no, they didn't go that far.
They didn't go that far?
They weren't on any public documents, but yeah, so
this is my mule.
No, but really that's what you had to do. So, and then they eventually said, this isn't working for us anymore. And it just got so complicated. And that might be one of the reasons why there's so many Norwegians getting DNA tests, because they can't figure out who's who before 1900. Honestly.
Patronymic. And now is there a you talked about Scandinavian, but is there a Slavic one too?
Yeah. You know this from tennis. Martina Navratilova, for example, she took her stepfather's surname of Navratil, and the female designation is Ova, and a brother would have been Ovich or Vich or Vic, however you want to say it.
So you're going to say that if you went to school and we're twins, and I was the brother and you were the sister and we're twins, that you would be Navratilova and I would be Navratilovich sitting next to each other?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. How do you keep track of all of this stuff? It's just makes it so out of control.
And was that just because they just needed to designate male from female?
I think that's it. That's what they did. Yeah.
Wow. People.
Yeah. It made it more simple for nowadays. But, and I do like the hyphen names that we have now a lot because it really does help. And then the kids you can tell the kids come from, the relationship of so-and-so dash so-and-so.
Right.
Yeah. So that's helpful. But, women usually lose their identity completely if they take their husband's name. And in this case, they had a different name from their parents to begin with in 1800s Sweden or Norway. And then they got married and they lost that name and took on their spouse's name. But then the kids had a different last name than both of them again. So it just got more and more confusing as you went from generation to generation. And then there's the abbreviations of Anders' daughter, for example. They don't necessarily spell out the whole thing. So when you're looking for stuff in Ancestry or in any of your searches online, you might see it's Anders, D-O-T-R or TTR, and it stops there. And and it doesn't match. It won't link up with if you're trying to see a DNA cousin and see if you have similar surnames in your DNA connections. That won't register because they won't take the other spelling of the abbreviation.
Wow.
I know, so it's really goofy. And I spent a lot of time trying to research my father's side, and I kept on running into all these names. And then they would say, you know what? We're done with this patronymic stuff. Let's just call ourselves the name of our town. So they cut off all of the other previous historical names and just called themselves the name of the town that their farm was in, or their farm itself, the name of the farm. I have a cousin like that where they just dropped right off of all of the family names and just, you know what? We're going to call ourselves the town now.
Okay. I come from Shady Acres. So there we are.
Good old
Shady
Gina,
Pines,
Shady Acres.
Shady Pines. But we've come a long way. We have totally come a long way. And I remember I've heard yes and I've heard no, that when, our great ancestors came across to Ellis Island, that all our names got chopped up. Yeah. Because they were too long, or they didn't know how to spell, and they
couldn't write it.
Yeah, they couldn't write it. So the person who was probably overworked, sitting there all day taking immigrant information, just wrote, well, you know what? F it. This is your name now. There you go. Bye. And here we are.
Yeah. And that's what they came into the country with, because they really didn't need to have any permission to come back, like in the pre-Ellis Island days even. They just came over. And the Ellis Island days too, they just came over and they were accepted generally.
Well, were they just first name basis and missing last names?
Well, that you can find a lot of, because a lot of times, women were just property of their husbands. So, in the census or even in the marriage records, they would just have like Anna Maria as the mom or the wife or whatever. And like, okay, well, what's her daddy name? Ned didn't care. Nobody cared. But if you could find it somehow, you need to find the father to find out her maiden name. And most people add something. They didn't just walk around with, first names all day long. So family names,
Jim Bob, you never know. Yeah, never know.
That would be Jim Roberts.
There you go. Jim Roberts. Jim Roberts Alova is what it is.
Avich.
Yeah. Well, that's the translated name, right? And
and the spellings.
The
spellings are crazy. My dad was going to drop an S, but he didn't. My mom wouldn't let him.
You needed that extra S. I'm glad you did. It's just, you can always find you.
I think that
it's always look for the double S.
I think that she got her citizenship before he did. And then I don't know if he got it. I feel like I remember this happening when I was really little, but I thought that he was an American citizen way before. But he was going to change it. He even had it like abbreviated to where it was only 4 letters.
Oh my God.
No.
We're just going by and now. Thank you very much.
Basically, it really was. Yeah.
Well, I know on our Italian side, it's CHIO, and then we've had the double C, and then some records it's KKIO, and you're just like, oh my gosh, who is falling off the beam on this one? Because that's ridiculous. But it's hard to find records on the Italian side, especially in LA, because they just, I know like on my grandparents' marriage certificate, they put as my grandmother's maiden name Finley, and that was the street they lived on. So the address was da-da-da-da Finley, and then her maiden name was Finley, and it was like, neat, these are records, people.
Yeah, there was a lot of that happened. And then it was legally bound. And there you are with some weird name that Finley doesn't even make sense for an Italian, does it?
No.
It's more like an Irish, possibly.
They slap an O at the end of it or something and say, oh, go on. Or an A. But no, it's crazy. And I don't know. That kind of irritates me because it's just like, really, it's that bad? And it is. It is finding stuff in here in America with it. And I don't even want to talk about trying to find Italian records. That's crazy in itself, trying to navigate the Italian search site. But we can go into that later. But, that's how they translated their names.
And they also do this online too, and it just is one of my pet peeves. Like the name Katharina in Germany should be spelled with a K. They don't have the sound for a C. Really, they don't really use that so much. It's always been with a K, but you can see a lot of the records they changed everything to the C. Or
Yep.
yeah,
Yeah, we have a Solardi in ours, and it's spelt with an O. Solardo. It's spelt S-A. It's spelt S-O-S-I. It's like, oh, come on, people.
and you know what? You know what happened there? I've got this too because it's the Catholic side of the Germans, and what they did was the priests went in and they changed the birth records to Latin. So if it was Katharina, it would be Catharium. Or if it was Peter, it would be Petri or Petrus or something like that. And it completely screws up. Like Barbara would be Barbarum. And every time I get one of those coming up, I just go in there and right away edit to like a normal name. I'll leave the Katharina with a C if it's there, whatever. But when they change it into Latin, that makes me out of my mind.
Unbelievable.
So, but that was like for like I don't remember what years those were. Was it 1800s or 1700s? It was ridiculous.
And isn't the Katharina, is that like a traditional name that families would name their children? Or did they have like the set, like, you know, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, when it's like, hey, this is Diana, Nita, and Nick, and this is my brother and his kids, Diana, Nita, and Nick. Did they all have the same family or names? Or was it different?
Well, a lot of the names during the 1800s, it's like everybody was named Johann. If you're a guy.
The House of Johann. We talked about it last time.
The
House of Johann.
Right. And so let's say there's like 8 kids and 4 boys. It would be Johann Peter, Johann Paul, Johann, whatever, Franz, and then there might actually just be one that is actually Johannes. So that's easy. Yeah. And then Anna was a big one. Anna, Katharina, Anna, Ava, Anna, whatever. And they would just keep doing that. And I think it's, some kind of like a religious thing to do.
And did they all have the same middle names?
No, that would be like they called it in Germany, they call it the Rufname, which is the name they call you. So you went by whatever, your middle name. So I don't know why you would do that, because it's like you sort everybody by their first name and they're all the same. So you have to sort by middle name.
Now, were you named after a relative? Do you know?
Yeah, my great grandmother, middle name.
Oh, great. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And which is funny. Yeah, I think we have the same middle name. So, but I also found out that my father's grandmother also had the same name, but I think he was a little sneaky because, my mom's like, I'm going to give Linda the middle name of my grandmother, which was Marie. And my father was probably sitting there going, okay, yeah, that sounds great, honey. You name her after your grandmother. Meanwhile, his grandmother was also Marie.
Everybody was Marie. Come to Italy. Everybody's Rose
this one
or Marie.
But
or
one
Mary.
was in Germany and the other one was in Norway.
Crazy.
Yeah. But that's a good name. You can kind of tell when people were born by their middle name, Marie.
So was the House of Johann like the favorite name you found during your research so far?
No,
I mean, because it's so much of it.
No, that's no, really?
I know. She showed me this list and she goes, look at this. And every name was Johann, Anna, Johann, Anna, Johann, Johannes, Johann.
But that wasn't the big story about it. The fact is that within 34 years, this woman had popped out 18 children.
You know what? Keep the nickel between your knees. I mean, my gosh, 18 kids. She was dragging.
Stop.
She was just dragging.
We are not going to be talking about popping people's organs back inside.
Yeah. But I mean, come on.
It's G-rated. This is a family show.
Okay. But 18 kids. Wow. I guess they didn't have anything to do on those cold, dark nights over there. But I know they had a lot. I mean, and I know some perished when they were young and stuff like that, but 18, and they all survived, right?
I think
The
16 of them
18?
did that I could tell
Wow.
so far. And, they were farmers, I'm sure. So these were all people that help work.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Muck the
But wow.
stalls.
find a new hobby, man. I mean, geez.
Yeah. When they say, Johann, go muck the stalls, there'd be 20 people that would get up and run over to the horse stalls. So
Yep.
crazy.
So, but one of my favorite names that I've came across was Baltazar.
Baltazar? Isn't that like
Balthazar.
a
It's probably a demon, sure. but-
villain? It's a
Yeah.
villain, is it?
Yeah. And Lothar, which is Luther.
Yeah.
Lothar.
Maybe that's where they got
Lothar.
the names from.
Probably. Yeah. And these are on the German side. There's so many interesting names.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy. That is crazy.
How about you?
So well, like I said, we're all like the Rose, the Anne, the Mary. We, my mom always talks about that. Her grandmother said, there was a baby at 9 months who ate a grape and died, but there's no buried. They're not buried anywhere, and it's
Well,
so. Was
they
this in
also-
Italy? And no, it was here. I'm like, well, where's the body? And then they said there were twins that didn't make it. Well, where are they? And stuff. And then we have another Mary, and she passed when she was 2 years old. Then we had my great aunt Mary who came along. So I'm like, okay, now we're working on 3 Marys, hoping one's gonna take.
Well,
and
yeah,
it's
they
like,
did that.
you know.
They kept on renaming like the next kid with the same name. It's like, oh, maybe it'll work this time. Nope.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe
But
we should find a new name. There's plenty of them.
Yeah, so we found Mary. We found the second Mary, but the first one who swallowed a grape and convulsed or whatever, is as my mom heard it from her grandmother. There's no trace of her, and I go, well. Then I said, oh, well, she was probably born in Italy, and my mom's like, no, it was here. She had her over her shoulder, and they were by a vine, and she grabbed a grape and perished. And I'm like, so where is she? I mean,
Yeah.
you wouldn't just bury a 9-month-old in the backyard. I'd hope not, but.
I don't know.
So
I mean,
it's
I
just,
found records for babies in German. And that's another thing, too. It's like finding the records and having to translate them.
Oh, gosh, yes.
But I did have some. It's like, and, it said, it was like, it was written in prose, not just like a form with all the stuff filled out, like, cause of death, whatever. No, they wrote, it's like, today, so-and-so Schmidt came to us, 43 years old, and he's a farmer, and he brought the news that his wife, so-and-so, who was not employed, gave birth to a dead baby boy.
Oh,
I know. It was like, it's
That's-
written like that, like in a storyline. It's
like a sad
Oh.
Hallmark movie.
It is very sad.
It was a sad Hallmark
Yeah.
movie.
And then it's like, okay, well, that's what this is. Because, and sometimes you'll find those records and you're like, oh, wow, this ancestor died when he was 30. But no, he did not. They had it. I don't know if they couldn't translate it right, but really it was the baby that died and not the actual parent. So I've had that happen before too. And then people were taking the death date of the baby as the parent date that was listed. So it's like all kinds of goofy stuff that you really should read the records when they're offered. If because a lot of times you click on like an ancestry record and it'll click you over to Family Search where you can pull it up and actually see it and read it. And if you can't translate it, you can download it and send it through this thing that'll try to process it with AI to translate it.
Have
and the
you
different
ever
handwritings and all that too.
have you ever gotten the same name, the same city, the same age, but it's not the right person?
All the time.
That's craziness too. There it goes. Now the city is full of the Johanns
Yeah.
and the Andersons.
Infested. It's infested
And-
with
with the Johann Andersons. And-
yeah.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
all you
like-
need.
Yeah. And so it's like, how do you know? That's crazy.
Well, they did this too. They would say the first or the old one.
Oh,
Or that's when they started naming themselves after their farm in the
Oh,
town.
gee.
Or, yeah, it's crazy. And I also have found this one town that is near my mom's hometown. It's like where a lot of her mother's people were from. And endogamy was rampant there. There were like families marrying families with the same name generationally. And they weren't necessarily related to each other, blood related, but they were Like one of them was a second cousin to me, 15 times removed or something. Not really, but second cousin 5 times removed. And then another one was like fourth cousin 6 times removed. And they would
it was okay to be married to them.
Well, it was always okay to them. But there was a lot of that going on. But and so those names kept showing up over and over and over again for me. Like, really? And are you guys in the same ancestral line? Nope, you're cousins of theirs. And you're kind of cousins of theirs too, but I don't know how. How many children does one couple have? Oh, it's not his. Maybe it's his brother's grandchildren. I don't know. So I'm kind of stuck there right now, and I'm trying to figure out how many freaking people were in this town back in the mid 1800s. Couldn't really find that, but there's only 3,000 now. The beauty of it is, I looked this up today, and for that town, one of the people that I was researching is actually a descendant is the mayor.
Oh, okay.
I know. So it hasn't really changed very much. Anyway, that was a tangent. But wrong person. And they all named each other like, we're all named each other ourselves after Lothar or Baltimore or whatever. Baltazar. So you have one with a different last name that's related to him anyway through mother's side or something. And so then they kept on recycling the names. So it is just like a freaking nightmare.
So in your thing, you have to learn about the marks.
Fun? Doesn't it sound like fun?
It does. Why not? But learning like the spelling and stuff, and you have the little marks over the vowels, like the double dots and stuff.
The umlaut.
Umlaut. Everybody say it together. Umlaut.
Umlaut. It's like a German meditation word. No.
Or a happy hour drink. I'd like an umlaut, please.
On the rocks. Thank you.
Yeah, on the rocks. On the rocks with some mini tacos. Thank you.
And a tidy bowl. What?
Yeah. So it's you have to change that spelling.
Well, what happens is if you don't use the umlaut, the designated umlaut, then it changes the pronunciation of the word or the name. Like Bueller. Picture, yeah, exactly that. Picture how that's spelled. It's Bueller. Bueller,
yeah.
Right? Bueller. If you were to spell it with an umlaut instead, you would drop the E and you put the 2 dots over the U, and that's an umlaut. And it's spelled the same. I mean, it's pronounced the same.
It's pronounced the same.
Yeah, but if you don't put it over there, it's Buller, right? You would pronounce it Buller without the.
So it was Ferris Buller's day off.
Well, if you didn't pronounce it right, yeah. But that's why they spelled it with the E, because it gives it that sound.
The U.
Yeah. So.
Well, and Spanish names as well.
Mm-hmm.
Too. So they do the long E or the long A and stuff. So
yeah, and that's something that really should be considered when you're trying to look things up. And it's like, is this a misspelling? Like if you are looking up the Miller family, right? And she's like, yeah, we're German. Yeah. Okay. Well, then is it really Miller? No, it's not. It's Mueller. It's either spelled with the UE or the U with the umlaut. If you pronounce it Muller, then it's also probably Mueller.
They would mean 2 different things too. I mean, because every name has a meaning, of course, back then.
Well, that's what they did too. Then they translated it like a Miller does the same job as a Mueller. Like, if you ran a mill.
Oh, okay.
You were a Miller.
So a Miller.
And if you're in Germany doing it, you're a Mueller. It's the same job and it's the same name. It's just translated.
Tomato.
Sort of.
Yeah. So what is Bueller then?
Well, Bueller means bully.
Oh, see?
Yeah. And you can kind of see it. You can kind of see it, right? If you look at it, it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So, so that's kind of it. I mean, names are really the biggest thing that we.
So, do you have any hints for people in a nutshell? Since I know we go off on tangents and joke and stuff, but to bring this back in and send people to research, what are the biggest things they need to talk about?
Well, figure out if your name is like really what it is, or if it was translated. And if you really don't have any clue where to start, put the name in. And if you think that people came over from another country, then try to figure out, oh, what could this have been besides this?
That's
this
good.
name. Well, like my last name, if my dad would have changed it and dropped an S, then I would have been looking for the wrong guy. I would have found the wrong dad in the records.
I would let you use one of my S's because I have two too. So
Well.
there you go.
Well, that's very kind of you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. And Gloss is the same in German as it is in English. Yeah.
See, we stand the test of time.
Yes, you do.
Well, this has been fun. I like this one because what's in a name? Everything. Everything is in a name. And, our poor ancestors came over and they're very proud of their names and they got taken away. And some say, no, they didn't. And for whatever reason is, we all probably have different names. So do your research, do your DNA testing and find out who the heck you are, people.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing too when you're looking in the DNA testing and you see different variations of names coming up. You can see that some of the people, like if you were a Miller and you did the DNA test and you fortunately had some people come up in Germany, and it's spelled Mueller. And it's like, huh.
Maybe we'll start a whole inspiration of new baby names.
Right.
That's what this podcast will do.
Balthazar.
So, Balthazar. There you go.
Yeah.
Either Alova or Avich. So
yeah, Baltazarovich.
So it's not Dankeschön, it's Dankeschönen. There you go, right?
It's not Dankeschön. It's Dankeschön.
Well, Victor Moan thought it was Dankeschön when he sang it. So.
And don't. It'll cost us. It'll cost us. We'll have to pay a royalty.
Oh, God forbid we spend a nickel. Hey, if you guys don't mind, come on over to our website, twiceremoved.net. There's blogs, there's video links, there's reference materials. And we were talking that we're going to do an episode, we think, about being a international foodie and maybe throw some recipes up there. And I will show you my dirty Italian pizza trays. So head over there, mark it down, write it down, bookmark it on your computer and your phones, and just have fun with us. We're always wanting your questions, so throw some at us and we'll try to get the answer. If we don't know, then we'll just joke about it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
This has been a fun one. Let's do it again soon. The Twice Removed podcast is produced by Linda Anderson and Gina Glass. All opinions expressed are of our own and of our guests. For more information and upcoming guests, please visit our website, twiceremoved.net.